What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is joining me in just a minute to talk about the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. We're coming off of an excellent wild card weekend. And really, for anybody that thought that this year's playoffs couldn't live up to last year's with all the close games and the awesome finishes, I don't know if it will, but this was an excellent start. We had a great weekend of football. We're looking forward to another great one this weekend. So we're going to go over all four games coming up this weekend. Get to spend a little bit more time on the games this week than we did last weekend, trying to get through all six. Ended up 4-2 last weekend, but 3-0 on the bets. So we're going to try to do a little bit better this week by going 4-0. Maybe throw another couple bets out there to help you guys out. So let's go. All right, Matt is here, joining us fresh off of Wild Card Weekend. Matt, 4-2 for the podcast last weekend. It could have been better, but the only people
there's no excuse.
No, the only people we have to blame are ourselves for not going 6-0.
It's completely and utterly unacceptable.
We talked about betting against the Vikings literally all year. And we're just like week 2, we were like, you know what we're going to do this year? First round of the playoffs, bet against the Vikings. And it was like a through line for the podcast the entire season.
Yeah.
Like, this team sucks. We're going to bet against them. We didn't do it.
No, we didn't. And who talks about the Chargers charging more than we do?
Okay, we literally invented the phrase Chargers going to charge. Like 12 years ago when we were in college, we invented this phrase, Chargers going to charge. And we've been saying it for years and years and years. And then it's like, I don't know. Jacksonville.
But this time.
To be fair, I feel like the Chargers and Jags I feel like we made the right pick, picking the Chargers. And it's just like the ultimate results over process thing, because we had all of the statistics we needed. We had basically everything on our side. And through 2 quarters of that game, I was feeling really good about it. I was like, damn, that was the first game of the weekend. They're up 27-0, the Chargers. And I was like, man, Matt and I are going to go 6-0 again this year. Like, this is dope. Like, I'm feeling good, hanging out. Like, Mike and his wife came over this weekend. So we're like hanging out, having a couple drinks. I'm like, man, I'm feeling good about where we're going with the picks for the podcast this weekend. And it just fucking meltdown, man. The Chargers just keep charging.
I blame myself because I've been a fan of a Joe Lombardi coached team. That man's offense will never win a playoff game. Ever. I don't care if you have the Ray Lewis Baltimore Ravens defense. That offense is not going to win a playoff game.
Well, to highlight your point too, I still don't understand how they lost, because they won the turnover battle 5-0.
Yeah.
Like, the Jags literally had a guy who a punt hit him in the side of the helmet, and the Chargers recovered it, and the Chargers still found a way to lose. It is absolutely mind-boggling that they found a way to lose that game. The only way to describe it is that it's a Joe Lombardi coached offense, and they got Lombardi specialed.
Yeah.
Because Herbert's average depth of target in that game was 6.3 yards per target. He threw 43 times and barely threw the ball beyond 10 yards. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Good on the Chargers. They finally got rid of Joe Lombardi, who, before we started recording, we said, yes, he will get another job. Joe Lombardi should not work in football ever again. But, yes, they got rid of him. Good on them for that. Brandon Staley still has to dig his reputation out of the gutter that he's put it in by hanging on to Joe Lombardi for 2 years. A guy whose play calling directly goes against the one thing that unlocked Justin Herbert. There's a lot at stake for this team next year.
by Brandon Staley as a good coach stock is all-time low.
Yeah.
All-time low right now after playing the starters in week 18 and having Mike Williams get hurt and then losing a game where they very, very clearly could have used Mike Williams. Man, it was
Yeah.
bad. And to be fair, you told me that too. It's like, because they hired him and I was like, oh, I really like what Staley does on defense. I think he's really creative, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, but he hired Joe Lombardi to be the offensive coordinator. So we have to question his decision making up front.
Yeah.
It was
That was
good.
my number one takeaway.
It was a good point. Lombardi was fired this morning. Like that was like you don't even get one day, right? It's like as soon as the playoff weekend is over and they're allowed to fire coaches, they're just like, you're done. You're fired. Did you watch the
Yeah.
game film? It's horrible. And then Minnesota just, I don't know. I'm so disappointed in us for not picking against Minnesota. I don't know what
Yeah.
we were doing.
We were kind of sitting there thinking, like, okay, Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is going to go win a playoff game. And he did. He played good.
And he was excellent.
He was really good.
Excellent. He's like the first quarterback ever to have a game with 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 70 rushing yards. He was amazing, but like also to be fair, everyone was wide open all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I know that, like, if you look at the season-long stats, like, yes, the Lions statistically were the worst defense in the league this year. Oh, man, I don't know. The Vikings defense is horrendously terrible. Like, if you look at the way they defend things, it is laughably bad.
Almost every single play from Sunday, there was an intermediate route open, whether it was like a drag or a dig or like a deep in or something like that. They had guys open over the middle of the field the entire game. Entire game. And we should have known that the Vikings were the worst defense in the league when Mac Jones threw for 300 yards against them this season. That was the key. Like when a Matt Patricia led Mac Jones quarterbacked offense throws for over 300 yards on you on Thanksgiving, it's like, should have been a sign. But we knew the signs. We saw the signs all year. We knew this was coming all year. The only thing that I can equate it to is before the season, when we were giving out fantasy football targets, and I was like, my top 3 targets are Justin Jefferson, Jalen Hurts, and AJ Brown. And I had exactly none of those guys on either of my fantasy football teams, even though I was like, these are the 3 guys I want this season. And then I had to watch them go off all season. I was watching the game the other day, and I still kind of felt like at the end that Minnesota was going to pull it out. They get the ball back down 7. They get some like BS roughing the passer call. I was like, oh my God, here it comes. They're going to do it. They're going to go for 2 and they're going to win this game. And it wasn't meant to be, because what was meant to be is that the Minnesota Vikings are a bad football team and we should have bet against them. And I'm pissed off at us for not doing it.
We literally have zero excuse for not betting on them. And we have to live with that for the rest of our lives.
This is one of those like seminal moments of regret in your life where you're just like, yeah, back in 2023, I had a chance to bet against the Minnesota Vikings in the first round of the playoffs, and I didn't take it.
When you talk shit about a team for 18 weeks, week after week, and then in the first round of the playoffs, you have a chance to bet against them, you bet on them, and they lose anyways, that's something that'll keep you up at night.
The one thing, my one saving grace that I will say is that I did not bet on them this weekend. I picked them on the pod, did not place a bet on them. My gambling weekend was excellent because I only bet on the things that I was really confident in. I had a Bengals Bills 49ers parlay that was minus 117, and I was like, I'm just going to throw like a bunch of cash on this, like all my betting cash for the weekend. Instead of having like 10 different bets, I was like, I'm putting it here. I sweated that out all weekend, but it hit. And then before the game last night, I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. Going Cowboys minus 3.5 after the analysis we did last week. And that was a good one as well. So
I just went round robin on the six-pick parlay. So, I mean, it didn't work out, but I didn't, completely lose out on it. So I I got a decent amount of it back.
Yeah, that's not the worst. The one thing I will say, the one thing I will give us credit for from last weekend is that we picked the Cowboys over the Buccaneers.
Yeah,
I did not realize how many people were picking the Buccaneers. All of the ESPN analysts picked the Buccaneers. They all were like, "We're riding with Tom Brady," and I was like, "Why?" Like the Buccaneers are a bad football team. They've been a bad football team literally
yeah,
all season, and people just get so caught up in the Tom Brady of it all. And I get it
yeah,
because we talked about it last week. I was like, it's like a heart versus head thing because my heart says pick Brady, but my head's like the
yeah.
Buccaneers are very bad. So
Well,
I'll give us credit for that one. That was a good pick.
yeah, and I think part of it is it's been like, two or three games throughout the season sprinkled in where like the offense just kind of pulls it together and you're like, okay, like there's still it's still there, there's something in there. And then they go right back to just being a bad football team after they get that one W. And I think people were expecting that to come out in a playoff game because of Tom Brady. And at the end of the day, like they had 17 games for Tom to get on the same page as his receivers, for them to figure out their protection. They just couldn't get it together all year. They couldn't figure out how to run the ball all year. They sure as hell couldn't run the ball last night. Like they were turned into a fine pink mist by a team that couldn't hit an extra point.
On the extra point thing, do you feel like I feel like once you miss two extra points, you're just never gonna hit one because you're just so like you missed the
Yeah,
first one and then you like try to correct on the second one and you overcorrect and now you're just completely
yeah,
fucked. You're just
yeah,
never gonna hit one. That's it for you. But yeah, the Bucks. I watched that Monday Night Football game near the end of the season where they played Trace McSorley and the Cardinals. I had like fantasy
yeah,
implications for the playoffs. There was a point in that game where I was like, I don't care who the Buccaneers play in the playoffs. I am not picking the Buccaneers, and I'm going to bet a large sum of money against them. And I actually
yeah,
stuck to that one, but we let the Vikings off the hook.
yeah.
They are who we thought they were, and we let them off the hook, Matt. God damn it. I will not get over that for at least until next season when we get another chance to bet against someone in the first round of the playoffs. But oh my God, it hurts. It
Yeah,
physically hurts. It was free money.
yeah, that god damn it.
All right.
God
We
damn it.
let's like I'll text you and we'll dwell in the past after we're done with this podcast. But
That's not what this is about.
the only thing it's just an hour long podcast of us crying about not betting against the Vikings. This is like we just us going back and forth saying God damn it repeatedly for an hour.
I'm actually genuinely curious to see how Certified B feels about this segment.
I'll message Brandon on Instagram after see how he's feeling. He sent me a thing on Instagram after the Patriots snafu in Las Vegas with the Hail Mary or with the lateral. And he's like, I bet you're
Yeah.
not feeling too good today. And I was like, okay, I've waited the appropriate amount of days. It's time to talk shit. But let's do better. Let's do better this week. The only thing we can do is move forward. Got a great slate of games this weekend. I'm super excited for this weekend. I talked about this a little
Yeah.
bit in the intro that like we didn't know if this year's playoffs could live up to last year's because of how great the playoffs were last year. I think we're off to a good start. Like we had a surprisingly fun weekend of football for Wild Card weekend, but this weekend is not sneaking up on anybody, man. We got some bangers.
Josh Allen versus Joe Burrow is a pretty good one, I would say. Maybe not as much of a great matchup, but still kind of fun. We get to see Mahomes versus Trevor Lawrence, the established versus the up and coming.
Yeah, and then even aside from that too, you got divisional rivalry, Philly and New York.
Yeah.
And then Sunday night is going to be the 6:30 Cowboys 49ers, the one that I guarantee you on Monday morning, you're going to see the ESPN article that says more people watched the Sunday night football game last night than any other game in the history of humanity. Seems to be that way. It happened in the playoffs last year as well.
I will say I am quite curious to see if Daniel Jones can string together another good game.
We'll talk about that game more in a minute. But let's start with the first game on Saturday. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs, Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Kansas City currently favored by 8.5. As we mentioned, the Jags somehow here, after being down 27-0 and losing the turnover battle 5-0, they somehow have advanced. It blows my freaking mind that they're here. They're going to have to be a lot better this week if they want to have a shot at this game. So you have to clean up those turnovers. You're going to have to do better on third down. They were 2 of 10 on third down against the Chargers as well, because Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to let you off the hook in the way that Joe Lombardi and the Chargers did. The Chiefs are not going to charge.
No, the Chiefs, I think, fully plan on chiefing, which is a very, very different from charging, by the way.
Like
I
literally
will say,
the opposite.
Yeah, the exact opposite. And I think that in order for them to have a chance in this game against the Chiefs, the Jaguars, Josh Allen has to have a big game as well. Like it can't be all on Trevor Lawrence and their handful of wide receivers and Travis Etienne. Like the defense has to come up with some big plays because you are not going to just straight up outscore them.
Yeah, I feel like kind of what happened in the game last week for the Jags is that the Chargers got up big and then kind of turtled.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, Herbert was not throwing the ball downfield very much in that game, certainly not enough. They kind of stopped being aggressive after being up 27-0. And when you take your foot off the gas like that, you really open the door for basically what happened to you to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Doug Peterson just being like balls to the wall aggressive and being like, yeah, we're not going to go down 3 after we're not going down 30-27 after scoring that touchdown. We're going to go for 2 and we're going to get it to the point where a field goal actually wins on the next drive and not like a tie. We're going to overtime type of game. We talked about the Jags' bad DVOA stats last week and talked about how we thought Herbert had a chance to kind of tear them up because they're 26 in defensive DVOA and 30th in defensive DVOA against the pass this season.
Yeah.
The Chargers really got the Joe Lombardi special where the plan was horrible. You didn't attack downfield enough, got too conservative, went underneath too much. And I get that part of that is that you have Austin Eckler, but like you have to counterbalance that with taking some deep shots as well.
Yeah.
You are going to have no such luck against the Chiefs, who are one of the most aggressive teams in the league. Patrick Mahomes is second in yards per attempt this season, 8.1 yards per attempt, only behind Tua Tagovailoa. The average depth of target is about a yard deeper per target than Justin Herbert was this season. Patrick Mahomes is going to sling this ball all over the field, and if you don't get pressure on him with the guys in that front seven, it is going to be a long day for the Jacksonville defense.
Quite frankly, you need to string together long drives. I mean, like a quick score here and there is definitely going to be helpful, but more helpful than that is going to be, 10, 12 play touchdown drives that keep Patrick Mahomes on the bench. Because the more he is on the field, the more opportunities he has to score. So that means if you're able to control time of possession, if you stop him once on defense, that is worth infinitely more than if you're just giving Mahomes as many drives as he wants and needs.
Yeah, it's the number 1 offense in terms of DVOA versus the number 30 defense. So I understand why the spread is 8.5 points. I can see that. The one thing I will say though is that the Chiefs have really let some teams hang around this season and not like
Mhm.
put their foot on the other team's neck when they had a chance.
Yeah.
They had the two wins against the Broncos were 27-24 and 34-28. They also had a 30-24 win against the Texans, and like the list goes on. There's a couple other games where it's like, okay, if you're really that good, I feel like you should have beaten this team by a lot more.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of NFL fans, maybe more casual fans, but like a lot of Chiefs fans too, just kind of feel like this team has a switch they can flip when it's playoff time. But I mean, you need to show me that if you're the
Yeah.
Chiefs this weekend. Like you're a big favorite, you're at home, you're going up against the number 30 DVOA defense. This should theoretically be a smash spot for you. And if you can't bury this team, then I think I'm going to have some concerns, maybe not as much for this round,
Hmm.
because like I'm going to spoil my pick, but I do think the Chiefs are going to win either way, whether it's like a blowout or whether it's a close game. But like I'd be more concerned about like the next two rounds if you can't smash this team, because this is a team that's basically just like waiting for it, and the Chargers couldn't take advantage of it, even though
Hmm.
they tried in the first half.
There is a big difference between regular season football and postseason football. And, coming into the season, we definitely had our questions and concerns about uh, what the Chiefs offense looks like without Tyreek Hill. And as much as they possibly could have this year, they answered that question. If you go into your first playoff game and can't manhandle a, quite frankly, vastly inferior team, that question starts to creep back up again. Not within the context of like, you know, are you a good team? Are you going to be one of the top teams in the AFC? But within the context of, can you still compete at that level with the top teams that you have to go up against in order to continue to win Super Bowls?
I question their ability to put teams away as well once they do get up
Yeah.
big, because like I like Pacheco as a running back, but like I
Mm-hmm.
mean he's not like a all world type of guy. I mean, so the Chiefs were 20th in rushing
Mm-hmm.
this season, and I'm like, you get big leads on some of these teams, you kind of let them creep back in, get a couple backdoor covers. I mean, we saw it against the Bengals in the playoffs last year where they were up 21-3 at home,
Yeah.
and they end up blowing that after like a really weird play to end the half. So I want to like, I just want to see it. I want to see it in this game from the Chiefs before I start telling you like, oh yeah, they're going to beat the Bengals or the Bills and go to the Super Bowl
Mm-hmm.
and play whoever in the Super Bowl. Like I need that like confidence instilled in me. I'm not just going to be one of those fans that's like, oh yeah, it's Patrick Mahomes. He's going to turn it on in the playoffs, because we've seen so many teams who are in a spot or who were in a spot similar to what the Kansas City Chiefs find themselves in, where they've won a Super Bowl, they've been to a couple Super Bowls in a couple years, they've played a lot of playoff games in recent memory. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you think especially in the NBA where it's just like, oh yeah, the Lakers will just turn it on when they get to the playoffs. It's fine. And then they get to the playoffs and it's like you just don't have that same intensity anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's the Chiefs, but I will be concerned about that if they can't bury this team this weekend or at least cover this 8.5 point spread.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair stance to take.
Are you afraid of going into Arrowhead at this point?
Not if I'm like Buffalo or Cincinnati or, a team that's on their level. I would say if I'm Jacksonville, this is not something that I want. I would much rather be at home in that scenario. But I wouldn't say that Arrowhead is a place that I'm just like, oh man, I don't know if we can win there.
And maybe this is just me having some recency bias, but I feel like Arrowhead kind of had a mystique for a little bit where it's like, God, that's such a hard place to play.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in like the last 4 years, we saw Brady and the Patriots go in there and win. We saw Joe Burrow and the Bengals go in there and
Mm-hmm.
win. We saw Josh Allen and the Bills go in there and win a regular season game
Yeah.
this year. And it's like, I don't know. I don't feel like that mystique is still there where it's like, God, this is like one of the hardest places to play in the NFL.
I mean, it certainly gets loud, right? And I think that that brings its own challenges. So not to like downplay its impact. I just don't know that Arrowhead is one of those places that really necessarily gives you a competitive advantage beyond that of other home stadiums, right? I mean, like, think about literally any place that has a dome. Like, yeah, if their team's winning, you better believe that place is getting loud. I don't know that there's that much of an advantage for most teams, anyways.
It's fair, especially with how we've been seeing home field advantage evaporate over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But I'm going Chiefs in this game. I not super comfortable taking that 8.5 points. I'm probably staying away from that line, but I think I'm going to have like a Chiefs money line parlay with another team we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going Chiefs. I might be a little bit more comfortable with taking that line, but I mean, there's definitely reason to maybe pump the brakes on that a little bit with the way the Chiefs have handled things throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm not buying points here. I'll tell you that. I'm not like betting it up to like 9.5 or 10. All right, game two, Saturday at 8:15 is the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles in the Adam hates this bowl. Philly is currently favored by 7.5. I feel like the Giants are kind of the team du jour this week after beating Minnesota 31-24.
Yeah.
The New York media machine is starting to get rolling and hype it up and be like, oh, well, we've seen the Giants do this before. Even though the only thing this Giants team has in common with those teams is the jerseys and the names on the front of them. But people like watch them win a playoff game on the road and they're like, oh, it's the Giants, man. They got the DNA. They can do this. And I feel like really what we're looking at here is a team that beat a bad Vikings team on the road. I was impressed with how Daniel Jones played last week, but they beat a bad Vikings team on the road. And now they're going up against a Philly team who's been one of, if not the best teams almost this entire season. And I feel like this is like that kind of, it's 7.5, and people are going to be like, that's 7.5. It's too high. It's too high. The Philly only beat them by like 4, and they didn't play any of their starters in week 18. It's too high. And I'm thinking I'm zagging on that. I like Philly in this matchup. What do you think?
I am kind of slightly where you are with the Chiefs on the Eagles. Like, I know what they can't do, and I've seen them blow teams out, but I also have not seen this team perform in the playoffs. That is what worries me. And I like we just saw, well, yes, like they beat a bad Vikings teams. I just saw the Giants put a good game together, right? Let's be honest, the big advantage that the Giants have coming into this game is they've got the better coach, clearly. I mean, everyone and their mother was writing off Daniel Jones coming into this season. And a lot of people like still coming into the playoffs were like, gotta move on from Daniel Jones. And then Daniel Jones proved it was serviceable all year and puts together a really, really good wild card playoff game. I don't think that we can discount that advantage in terms of how this game is going to play out. I I have a really hard time saying that like the Giants are going to pull this off because there's just such a disadvantage roster wise. Like It's a big disparity. But that's also the disadvantage that the Giants have been playing with for most of the NFL season, too. So I think they managed to keep this game closer than it has any right to be. And, who knows? Maybe Brian Dable pulls some magic out of his hat and they surprise even me. But I think that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts still have some things to prove to me. If they look in this game the way they looked all season, okay, like you've done everything that I needed you to do for me. But I want to see it in these games. I'm not going to make the mistake that I made last week with both the Chargers and the Vikings with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. I said really since last season, I need to see it. Show it to me in the playoffs. So show it to me in the playoffs.
Yeah, my concern for the Eagles in this game is how is the bye week going to affect them?
Yeah.
My feeling is that the bye week came for them at the perfect time and it was desperately needed because they did not finish the season particularly strong with Jalen Hurts' injury. And now, like, he was back for the last game of the season, but didn't really look that great and was kind of tentative. And I think having a week off could do wonders for him, kind of rehabbing that shoulder and getting it ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he is afraid to run the ball or he's like tentative running the ball in this game, the Giants will win. Like, if he sits back and tries to be a pocket quarterback this entire time and takes away the threat of him running the ball, the Giants will win this game. The problem for me is that, like you said, it's such a disadvantage roster wise.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's, you said the Giants have played with it all season, and that's true, but like I feel like it's even more pronounced against the Eagles because the Eagles have one of the better, deeper rosters in the entire league.
Yeah.
And the real big concern for me is that the Eagles want to run the ball, right? They're going to run it with Hurts a bunch, assuming that he's healthy. They're going to run it some with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell.
At least 5 times with Sanders.
At least 5, maybe 6. But they're going to want to run the ball, and the Giants are 30th against the run in DVOA. And we saw this play out, maybe not the last game of the season, where I'm just kind of throwing out the week 18 results at this point because I just feel like it was such a wonky week for so many teams. But the first time these teams met, the Eagles blew them out and they ran all over them.
Yeah.
All over them. So my thought is it's going to be a little bit more like that, but you're like absolutely right. If there is any coach in the league at this point who's going to overcome that roster disparity and at least put together a game plan that makes this difficult on the Eagles, it's going to be Brian Dable. I mean, I have a hard time saying that he's not the best coach in the entire league at this point with what he's done this season with the Giants.
This hurts me to say, but like if Brian Dable is not coach of the year, then everyone who voted for someone else should probably just lose the right to vote. Because look at that roster and tell me it has any business with more than 6 wins.
And here they are in a divisional playoff game.
Yeah.
they won a playoff game.
If I remember correctly, didn't they have to like cut Bradbury for like nothing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let him go before the season started. At this point, though, with the Giants, like, do you think they pretty much have to re-sign Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback? Like, they pretty much got to give him that starter money right now, right?
I mean, they can't not bring him back after this. The thing is I think you either do a prove it deal with him, which is a risky move, or you try to get the best bargain on a deal you can with him, which is still probably somewhere around like 30 million in the current market, and then just start trying to draft someone that you can develop. Not from the standpoint that they have to inevitably replace him, but should at least line up your shot to do better if Daniel Jones does not make significant improvements. And in fairness, this might be like the first real legitimate coaching that Daniel Jones has had in his entire NFL career. So, like, who knows? Maybe he actually could continue to improve. But I definitely think that you need to plan for the potential that he does not continue to progress from here.
I guess at this point, I would trust Dayball's judgment and just be like, what do you think? Bring this guy back as the starter, or like, do we
Yeah.
need to bring in some competition? If he says that he's comfortable with him as the starter next season, give him that starter money, man. Because whatever Dayball says right now, I trust. If he comes out and he's like, yeah, we're going to cover that spread against the Eagles this weekend, I'd be like, okay, he said he's going to do it. He's going to do it. I believe him. So, I'm going to go Philly in this game. Where are you going?
I'm taking Philly. I'm gonna give Philly covering the spread. I think they'll it'll be at least 8.
Maybe we like tease Philly and Kansas City, or maybe we do like an alt spread parlay where we take them both down to 6.5 and put those together.
Yeah.
That might be. We'll figure that out before the weekend. But the pick so far, so we got Chiefs, we got Eagles.
Yep.
Game. Now we're going to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, I think, has the potential to be the best day of football that we've had so far this year. I mean, like conference championship day is probably going to be better,
Mm-hmm.
but I really like the games on Sunday, especially the first one. This is my favorite football game of the season so far.
Yeah, I love the first one. I love the second one, but probably for different reasons than what you.
Oh no, I like the second one from a money making opportunity.
Okay, good.
We'll get there. But the first game, Bengals at Bills, 3 p.m. Sunday. The Bills are currently favored by 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these teams squeaked out narrow wins against divisional opponents with backup quarterbacks last week.
Yeah.
You know, really, like I said, I had both teams in a parlay over the weekend, and I was sweating it out for
Yeah.
the entire game, both games. I was like, oh my God. I don't know which one of these teams deserve to lose more, but one of the things about having a great quarterback like both these teams have is
Yeah.
that sometimes when everything is going wrong, you still have this guy you can rely on and go to when you need them most. And you know, say what you will about how they won these games, but they got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're here. And this, I think, is going to be an excellent game. This was the Monday Night Football game in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago with the Damar Hamlin incident, where
Yeah.
one of the shames about that, and obviously, like he's doing better now, so I can say this, but kind of sucked that we didn't get to see that game.
Yeah.
That would have been very informative for playoffs, and even potentially like Cincinnati. This could have been a home game for Cincinnati if they would have won that one. So
yeah, I mean, there was a distinct possibility at the time going into that game that Cincinnati still could have attained the 1 seed.
Yeah, and if Cincinnati wins that game, all of a sudden we're looking at a Bengals team that has wins over the Bills and the Chiefs this season, and you're like, damn, that's a pretty good Cincinnati team. Yeah. We obviously didn't get a result that game, and I kind of feel like that's why the spread is 4.5, because I feel like that's too high. I'm a little concerned about the Bills because of Josh Allen specifically. Josh Allen led all QBs this year with 19 turnovers. He had 3 more against the Dolphins and then 2 more fumbles that were recovered by the offense. So,
yeah,
I mean, he kept the Dolphins in that game pretty much by playing hero ball and not protecting the ball very well, like with the fumbles. We talked about him a lot this season, and when we talked about his turnover issues earlier this season, we were both just kind of like, oh yeah, he'll play his way out of it eventually.
Yeah.
Well, we're in the divisional round of the playoffs, and he hasn't played his way out of it so far. So I don't think we can magically count on that going away.
Now is the distinct time to play your way out of it.
Well,
it is now or never.
That's where I'm going, is that if he does not play his way out of it and he continues to turn over the ball, they will
Yeah.
lose this weekend.
Yeah.
They will lose. They have turned the ball over 30 times
Hmm.
in 17 games this season. That is by far the highest of any playoff team. The only teams who turned the ball over more than them this season were like the Colts and the Cardinals. And
Yeah.
those teams both won like 4 or 5 games. So the good thing for them, like, so they're even in turnover margin for the season. They turned the ball over 27 times. They forced 27 turnovers. So that helps. But I don't think you can count on Joe Burrow to give you like 2 or 3 turnovers and make it an even margin if Josh Allen isn't protecting the ball.
One of the things that we have seen develop with Buffalo in the last handful of games of the season is the emergence of James Cook. And I think they need to lean on that more than they have. I think they need to understand that while their star quarterback is incredible and can bail them out of some pretty bad jams that you don't really see a way out of, that's all true. He's also pressing. That is the only explanation for why he is turning the ball over at the rate that he is. And you need to take some of that pressure off of him by letting the running game just do its thing. And if you can get things going with James Cook, then that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for him.
I actually think that we've seen Josh Allen fall into the trap that we saw Patrick Mahomes fall into a lot last season
Yeah.
when he went through that difficult stretch where he's falling in love with the deep ball and he thinks he can just
Mm-hmm.
hit that all the time. And
Yeah.
so they're not like working their way down the field as much as they could be this season with like you
Mm-hmm.
said, James Cook and going underneath to some of these guys. He just
Yep.
like really wants to hit those deep shots to Diggs and to Davis.
Yeah.
And he just kept throwing them this week, like over and over and over. He's like, I got it. I can do it. I can do it. And it's just a wasted play more times than
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. And I think that one of the benefits of getting James Cook going is that while we have seen that you don't necessarily have to have success running the ball to have play action be successful, it certainly helps. If you're, especially in a playoff game, if you are running the ball successfully, those safeties are going to react to that. If you've got, Diggs and um, Gabe on the outside as well, it only takes one time for those safeties to just take one wrong step and they're already behind them. And Allen's going to hit that throw. So just investing in that and utilizing it to the best of your ability is going to make it easier for him. So yeah, he can hit that deep throw the way he wants to. Just set it up for him so he doesn't have to do it all himself.
Yeah. And don't throw like 12 of them a game. Give me like 4 or 5. Yeah, I mean, on the Bengals side, my biggest concern for the Bengals is that they lost another O lineman to injury
Yeah.
last week. So it's already not a very good offensive line when everybody's playing. Now you have La'el Collins, who's going to be out. Kappa got hurt. Brown is hurt. Williams is hurt. They're all the last 3 guys are all questionable for this weekend. So it's like it's hard to say right now, sitting here on Tuesday the 17th, like who's playing for the Bengals offensive line.
Yeah.
But if they can't protect Burrow, then we can't have one of those games like they had last season in the playoffs where he gets like hit 12 times and sacked 6.
Yeah. If your offensive line is not up to par against this Bills defensive line, it's already over. Like Burrow's just not gonna have a chance. And that's saying a lot because while Burrow isn't necessarily a runner, he's a very good athlete and he's got some escapability. But there's just so many good guys on that defensive line. and Buffalo does such a good job of rotating them in and out to keep them fresh. If those guys are fresh, there's only so much Joe can do.
So I'm actually not really that afraid of Buffalo's defense at this point. If you watch that game this past weekend, Skylar Thompson's like stat line doesn't look great, but they had dudes wide open all over the place.
Yeah, I mean their secondary has definitely been a disappointment to me.
Yeah,
But
it just
they can absolutely get after the passer though.
they can for sure, but it's definitely fallen off since Von Miller got hurt.
Yeah.
I watched that game and I was watching like Waddle just repeatedly be wide open in the secondary and not be able to bring the ball in. And then like Skylar Thompson was missing guys and making some bad throws and turning it over because he's Skylar Thompson. But like the fact that those guys were so open so many times during that game, that's kind of concerning for me. But it's going to all come down to like, because the Bengals have another like top 3 receiving duo.
Yep.
In Chase and Higgins. I mean, like last week they had Hill and Waddle, and that creates all these issues. Now it's Chase and Higgins. But is Joe Burrow going to be standing long enough to hit those throws? Like, Joe Burrow can hit those a lot better than Skylar Thompson can, but nobody's hitting those throws from the back.
Yeah.
So, which way are you leaning for this game?
I look at the rosters. I look at the things that they do well, the things they don't do well, and they're pretty damn close for me. Then I got to go look at the coaching situation. And I am not picking Zach Taylor in this situation. I can't do that. So I got to take the Bills here. When everything else feels equal, I'm going to rely on the better coach to shore up their weaknesses just a little bit more and prepare for the team's weapons just a little bit better. Like those are the things that really honestly make the biggest difference. Those are the things that account for the wow, well, this didn't really go the way I thought it was going to go type of games.
So this is good because we've agreed on like 25 straight playoff games.
Yeah.
On this podcast, and we're going to disagree. And I think that shows how close this game actually is and like how hard it is to pick.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to pick the Bengals. And this is my hot take of the NFL playoffs so far. If I got to pick who I trust more to win me a game between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow in the NFL playoffs, I'm taking Joe Burrow right now. Josh Allen cannot stop turning the ball over. I just trust Burrow. Just Joe Burrow wins football games. And I know that people are going to look at that and they're going to say like, oh, well, quarterbacks don't play defense and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow wins football games. I was a fan of a quarterback for 20 years in New England who just won football games. And people are like, oh, well, he had this and he has this and blah, blah, blah. It just comes a time where your quarterback has to win you a football game. And right now, I think I trust Joe Burrow to win me an NFL playoff game more than any other quarterback in the league, including Patrick Mahomes, including Josh Allen. I don't know what it is. It's Joey B. Joey Brr. I just trust him. I trust him.
Oh God, what did you just do?
I know. You haven't heard that before? They got like shirts and everything.
No, shut it down. Shut it all down.
The thing, like I said, the thing that makes me nervous is that the offensive line may not be able to keep them upright. But if they do, I think Chase and Higgins are going to have a field day.
Yeah.
I just watching how open Waddle was on some of those plays and some of those deep throws, man. Burrow's going to drop that ball in so perfectly, but he's got to have the offensive line give him the time to do it, and that makes me nervous.
That's kind of the thing that worries me more than anything in this game is if we are noticing that Josh Allen is turning the ball over a lot and that the other team has Joe Burrow, then I'm pretty sure Sean McDermott has also noticed that. And I'm pretty sure he knows that turning the ball over the way that they have against Joe Burrow is pretty much a death sentence. And not that like it's been a willful act by Josh Allen the last entire season, really. But I believe that they can prepare for a week in a way where they get their heads on right and Josh Allen just takes care of the ball a bit better. That's a real possibility because he's shown he can do it in the past. What we have not seen is the Bengals' ability to protect the passer at any point. They have been bad his entire career at that. If Sean McDermott is trying to figure out how to stop Joe Burrow from being Joe Burrow, really just means that they have to attack the one thing that Zach Taylor has never been able to fix. I got to rely on the better coach being able to basically take advantage of glaring weakness.
Yeah, it's a good point. The one name that we haven't mentioned so far that I do want to mention real quick is Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo.
Yeah, he's
I
very
think
good.
about, yeah, he's incredible. So like while Zach Taylor is not that good as a head
Yeah.
coach, Lou Anarumo was good. And like I said last week, we did like a half-hour podcast segment last year on what he did to take Patrick Mahomes out of that AFC
Yep.
Championship game.
Yeah.
Really doubt he takes Josh Allen out of this game, but
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the Bengals score. Josh Allen turns the ball over. Bengals hit a deep pass. All of a sudden, it's like a 14-point swing.
Yeah. What is the over under set at?
It's like 50
You
and
know,
a half.
I think I'm taking the under.
48 and a half.
Okay, maybe a little bit more trepidation, but I might still take the under on that. Just from the standpoint of obviously knowing that there's those offensive line problems, and obviously like that could swing a little bit once we know who isn't playing for that offensive line. Anarumo has put together some incredible game plans both in regular seasons and in the playoffs. Well, yes, we have two very, very potent quarterbacks. I think that there's plenty of reason to think that maybe this game isn't as high scoring as it's expected to be.
No, but I think it'll be a fun one no matter what.
Yeah.
All right, the last game of the weekend, the 6:30 game on Sunday, which I
Yeah.
just want to say is like the perfect time for a primetime game. 6:30 East
Yeah.
Coast time, because like we always bitch about how the 8:15 games, it's like, oh my god, guys, stay up till
Yeah.
midnight and finish this game. 6:30 is a beautiful time
Yeah.
for a primetime playoff game. The Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers opened favored by 4.5, and the line is already down to 49ers by 3.5.
Okay. Wow.
I feel like this is the classic, like Dallas looks really good in the first round against a bad Buccaneers team. And all of a sudden, everybody's all on Dallas. And they're like, oh, Dallas, they just took out Tom Brady. They beat the crap out of Tom Brady. And then they go up against the team in the 49ers who has literally everything they have, but better. Dallas was 6th in DVOA this season. San Francisco is 2nd. Dallas is 2nd in defensive DVOA. San Francisco's number 1. Dallas has a bunch of great weapons: Pollard, Zeke, Lamb, Schultz. San Francisco is better. Like CMC, Mitchell, Ayuk, Debo, Kittle. San Francisco is everything that Dallas is trying to be.
Yeah.
They're blue chippers across the board. And while Dak Prescott looked amazing against the Buccaneers yesterday, probably had the best game of his entire career, I don't think that people can tell me that like I should trust Dak Prescott more than I trust Brock Purdy in this spot, even though Brock Purdy's a
No.
rookie.
No, I mean we've seen Dak Prescott be underwhelming enough in the playoffs in the past. We've seen him be underwhelming enough this season, like repeatedly. like the majority of the games that has played this season. And we've seen him have his spikes and productivity this season, and then it just kind of goes away. Like it doesn't signal any sort of turnaround for me.
I get people want to be hyped up after he had 5 touchdowns in a playoff game against the Bucks, and that's great.
Yeah.
But like my picking the Cowboys over the Buccaneers last week was not as much a pro Cowboys pick as much as it was an anti Buccaneers pick.
Yeah.
Because like I said, after watching the Buccaneers all season, like I was like, I'm picking literally whoever plays them. Like I'm not picking the Buccaneers. I'm picking against them no matter what.
If you watched that game, could you honestly say that they weren't dead in the water from the kickoff?
No, and I never thought that it was going to be that close, but they San Fran is just a totally different beast.
Yeah.
At this point, man, the defense is so good. There's so many weapons on offense. And I know the advanced stats nerds are going to come out and they're going to say, Adam, Brock Purdy actually wasn't as good as his stats look last season. He hit the screen pass to Debo and blah, 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 blah. The 49ers essentially beat this same Dallas Cowboys team at home last season in the playoffs with Jimmy Garoppolo and a less talented roster. I see 49ers winning this game. I would bet this up from 3.5. I'm going to buy points in this one. I think Dallas has had a good season and that they're a good team in their own right, but I think the 49ers are just like a different beast than any of the teams in the NFC right now.
Even Dallas's defense, I see as a liability in this game. Dallas's defense is successful because of how aggressive their front is. And that over aggression against a Kyle Shanahan running game is going to lead to them getting gashed by Christian McCaffrey. I don't see them stopping the run at all. And if you can't stop the run against this team, you're not beating them. You're not. You're not stopping them from scoring because they will do it again and again and again. And when you think you finally like have it figured out what they're going to call next, they'll pull some sort of like weird gadget play out on you.
Yeah, and I know we're all waiting for Brock Purdy to turn back into a pumpkin, but like one, I think it's been long enough at this point where it just might not happen. And two, the offense, we talk about this so many times with the 49ers. They just have so much talent all over the place that really all Brock Purdy has to do in this game is play point guard.
Yeah.
And they'll be completely fine offensively. Like, yeah, just throw the screen pass to Debo.
Yeah.
Throw the 10-yard in to Ayuk. Let McCaffrey have the ball. Like, I don't necessarily trust Dak in this game. I think that like this is the classic Cowboys played on Monday Night Football and killed Tom Brady, so they get overhyped game. And the line is already coming down. It started at 4.5. It's already down to 3.5. We'll see where it is by game day. But yeah, I'm going 49ers all the way.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing on Brock Purdy, like this 49ers team has seen a lot more of him than we have. So they know what they have in him more than we do. They absolutely, could have gotten their hands on Baker if they wanted. Didn't have any interest.
I feel like this is a crazy question, and maybe I'm overreacting, but is there a quarterback in the NFC playoffs right now that you trust more than Brock Purdy?
Yeah,
Purdy, Hurts, Daniel Jones, and Dak Prescott. Who do you trust the most?
It's between Purdy and Hurts for sure, and obviously both of them are kind of in the same boat that like they've got to show it to me in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's fair. It is just like it's funny that it's a serious debate right now.
Yeah.
When you're looking at like, okay, Hurts almost won the MVP this season. Daniel Jones just had a massive road win. Dak Prescott just scored 5 touchdowns against the Bucs on the road.
Yeah.
And it might be the last pick in the draft that we trust the most, partially because he's been great, but also in very large part because the offense and the scheme is just so good around him.
Yeah,
that he needs to do the least out of these guys to win a game,
for sure.
right? Like they don't need him to be superhero like Hurts. They don't need him
Mhm.
to throw for 300 and run for 70 like Daniel Jones did. They don't need him to score 5 touchdowns like Dak Prescott did. They just
Right.
need him to play within himself and pretty much manage the game and get the ball to the right guy at the right time. And he's been so good at making the right decisions in this offense this season. And that's what's made him so successful. And I think we see more of that again this weekend. I think you're absolutely right that the front seven of Dallas is extremely aggressive. And while that
Mhm.
makes them very good against a team like the Buccaneers, that can also be their undoing in against the Kyle Shanahan offense. So
Yep.
I'm going
And
49ers. You're going 49ers.
oh, 100%. I don't think there is a spread that they could put out there that I wouldn't be interested in.
Well, it's only 3.5 right now. So pick your number.
Yeah,
Pick your number. You can bet it up. The more you bet it up, the better your odds are going to get. So you take it up to like
yep,
6.5, take it up to 8.5,
yeah,
see where it's at. I mean, and maybe we're wrong, and maybe this game does end up being a little bit closer because Dallas is a lot better on paper than people give them credit for. But
yeah,
I just feel like it's a classic, like overhyped spot. So I would at least retrace that bet to bet on the 49ers by 4.5. Like I would take the original line at least. And then you guys make your
yeah.
own decisions from there.
I get that there is some value to this Cowboys team. They've definitely they've done some things on defense this year that deserve quite a bit of respect. I look at their schedule and their wins and losses, and I'm just like, where was I supposed to be impressed?
Sometime around when they beat Gardner Minshew. But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. Everybody enjoy the games this weekend. Matt, we only have one pick different. So we both have Philly, Kansas City, and the 49ers. You have the Bills. I have the Bengals. We'll see where it goes. I feel like this is another. I said this last weekend, but I feel like I'm going to say it again this weekend that there's just going to be one team that screws up everybody's parlay or
Oh
everybody's
yeah.
team. Like the Giants beating the Eagles or like Dallas upsetting the 49ers.
Yep.
So um,
Yeah.
while we sound very confident in the picks, I'm sure the games are going to be excellent. So enjoy all the games this weekend. And Matt and I will be back next week on Wednesday to break down the AFC and NFC championship games.
That we will.
But all right, my friend, I'll see you soon.
Yep. Later.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye,
Robert.
Mom.